Mona Sharma is a dynamic leader and entrepreneur in the health and wellness industry, as well as a celebrity wellness educator who works with high profile clients all around the world. She recently has a reoccurring role on the Facebook series Red Table Talk, where they profiled her health and wellness work with Will Smith and the entire Smith family. She is also a holistic nutritionist, mind body coach, and founder of Jicama, an innovative line of functional food and beverage products that deliver gut and immune boosting benefits of the superfood jicama. Mona now lives in Los Angeles and works with clients around the world, but growing up, she spent summers living on an ashram, learning the power of food as medicine, yoga, and meditation to heal the body. Today, these are pillars of Mona's philosophy, helping her clients achieve their goals for long-term optimal health and excellence. Mona, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Soul Collective podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Yeah, so I first want to ask you, what does mind, body, and spirit alignment look and feel like for you?
Yeah, so it's funny because this is the journey, really. Like, I think many times we look for a system that's going to allow us to arrive to alignment and flow all the time, when we have to really accept that it's a journey. And I'm still learning this journey, but I would say that it's a feeling that you have. So often when I describe what I do with my clients is I really address this idea of vibration, right? So it's that like totally woo-woo word of vibration that's becoming really, really trendy. But I think everyone here, whether or not you're using the word or not, it's something that you can connect with. So, I help people raise their vibration so that their thoughts and their feelings are really taking them out of feeling, out of balance and not feeling good, into a state of high vibration, right? Because when you're in a state of high vibration, you're connected to happiness and joy. So what's an example? When you're out of alignment with this high vibration, you're, going to feel tired, anxious. You're most likely going to drive to a drive-through or look for fast food and just kind of like go about your day. When you're aligned with high vibration, you do things that are good for you. You feel like you're aligned. You get the phone calls at the right moment. You feel like you've got this sense of purpose and deeper meaning. And from that space, you naturally choose the things that are good for you. And I know, everyone has experienced that, but how do we stay in that, especially today when anxiety and anxiety-related disorders are still on the rise, especially with COVID, right? Like this number obviously is going to go up. So I would say now more than ever, it's important for all of us to really take charge with like the emotion, this energy that we feel every day, so that you're aligned with mind, body, and spirit.
Yes, and part of what I absolutely love about your story is you really like lived it and breathed it and went to places of feeling out of alignment and work yourself back into that. And so you know how messy it can be and how the journey can be frustrating. And I just would love if you could share a little bit of your journey.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of people in the wellness world, we really have to overcome certain obstacles so that we can really relate to other people on this healing journey or as a healer. So about 10 years ago, my life looked very different. I worked in the cosmetic industry. I worked as head of education for sales and artistry training for brands like Christian Dior, Tom Ford Beauty, Bobbi Brown Cosmetics. And it was a great experience. Don't get me wrong. It was fun. It was exciting. I learned a lot of skills there that I still use today. However, it wasn't in alignment with my purpose. And at the time I was stressed. I suffered from debilitating anxiety. I was about 40 pounds heavier. I had heart palpitations all the time. I was actually recovering also from 2 heart surgeries, right? But my mentality back then was to go hardcore, right? So even at my most unhealthy, I was exercising for like an hour or 2 a day. I was on a hardcore diet. I was doing all of the things, but I was completely out of alignment and I was only getting sicker. And I would say like, ground zero for me was being told that I was going to have a hard time having children. I have 2 kids today. It all worked out, but that was like, what am I doing here? And the irony of this for me was my background growing up was very different. So my father is East Indian, my mother is Danish. And growing up, I've only ever known my mother to suffer from debilitating autoimmune disease. Her entire body's deformed as a result of rheumatoid arthritis. But with my father's insight, he knew about Ayurveda. right? The ancient Indian science. And he would take us to live at an ashram every single summer. So for those of you who don't know, ashrams are typically spiritual centers. They exist all over the world. You don't have to go to India, but there's a strong focus on food as medicine, mindfulness, being in community, using the power of meditation and thought power, nature, and connecting with your own constitution. But, you know, growing up as a little kid being told to meditate at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, sit in breathing exercises for 32 an hour a day, you know, eating plant-based foods, and like, it felt like torture as a kid. So when I got to my 20s and I like got into the corporate world, I was like, screw this. I forgot all the lessons until I needed them myself. And when I kind of had that last straw, I decided to go back to my roots. So I went back to one of the ashrams that I grew up with. I became a yoga teacher, a nutritionist. I got heavily involved in mindfulness and the power of the mind to heal the body. And that was really the changing point. And I would probably say that it's led to a lot of my success with my clients today, because I think that we think of this idea of optimal wellness, again, as being hard or challenging, when really it's a back to basics, right? Ashram living with such a strict schedule every day. So from about 5:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, you have a strict schedule of what you're doing. And these rituals really are designed to shut down every single tab that's open in your mind, the noise, so that you're ultimately left to deal with self. Well, what are those voices telling you? How are you actually feeling in your physical body? What emotions are coming up every single day and why? It's like getting to know yourself all over again. And for me, I found that I was just, like I said before, in complete disconnect with flow and what really feeling good meant for me, not with what media and society was telling me, and really finding my own kind of path to get back to happiness again.
There's so much of your story that I want to unpack and that I can actually relate to. You know, I know my journey through corporate America. I was so busy and I was so on the go that I really didn't listen to my body. I was so out of tune, and, you know, things like over exercising or just like, you know, eating unhealthy were just much easier to do because I could really have this sort of disconnect with my body. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the symptoms or the subtle signals that your body was giving you during that time?
So I would say that everything probably started off with anxiety. So I've suffered from anxiety from the time that I was a little kid, not knowing that it could have been the byproduct of me having poor digestion, of me just not feeling. I mean, I grew up in a great household that was full of love, but there was always a sense of walking on eggshells. So, you know, it's essentially what formed me. Anxiety was part of my DNA. And I never was really taught that I could get rid of it. It was just who I knew myself as.
Mhm.
As I progressed and went down this avenue of stress and busyness, right? Busy has become the new emotion for people today. My symptoms started to appear a little bit more rapidly. So this included things like, you know, having an irritable bowel, suffering from poor sleep, um, alternating from constipation to loose stool, feeling kind of like this feeling of like not fitting in every single day, getting used to feeling bloated after every single meal, you know, in this constant state of self-criticism. And then it suffered from migraines, right? And then that led to things like PCOS and never having a regular period. So
Mhm.
I'm a firm believer that our bodies are giving us these signals, right? Our bodies is this magnificent thing that just like communicates with us all the time, but we have become experts at ignoring the whispers, right? Those whispers of like, hey, something's not working here. Or like, hey, that like bloating right there, tune into that because something's not working down here. We really need your help. And we become experts at that until they turn into screams. For me, it turned into a scream. It got too loud for me to avoid anymore, that I had to deal with my health and tune in. And
Mhm.
so, you know, when I give these workshops to people and I ask people to raise their hand, as I list through these symptoms that are very, very common today, everyone's hand is up at the end. And I'll always say, just because your symptoms are common does not mean that they are normal. So listen, tune
Mhm.
in.
What are some of the symptoms that you observe that are sort of commonplace that we really shouldn't be ignoring?
I would say, something as minor in your mind as experiencing headaches every day to bloating, indigestion, not having a regular bowel movement is major. Like your digestion is everything, right? Our food is our information that allows us to thrive every day. So if something is off in your digestive process that's preventing you from digesting, assimilating, or absorbing all of the nutrients that you're getting from high quality food, then you're not going to feel your best, right? This morning, I just spoke with somebody who was like, well, I'm doing all the things. I don't understand why I don't feel good. Just because you're doing all the things that are good for you doesn't mean that you're doing all of the things that are good for you, right?
Mm,
Understand and value the fact that you have this unique constitution that must be honored. How could one diet be perfect for every single person on this planet, right? So cueing into those symptoms specifically around the digestive system and create that shift, because when you can digest, assimilate, and absorb effectively, then you will thrive. And I just want to add a point to that. Stress,
mm,
right? We all suffer from stress. Now, some stress is beneficial. It can actually help to support our immune system. It could be what gives us that get up and go, our drive every day. However, it's the constant, consistent daily stress over time that fuels imbalance, dis-ease, and potentially disease in the body. When we eat in a state of stress, it shuts down digestion. Okay, so when you think about the last time that you had your meal, if you were eating while scrolling, watching the news, working at your computer, driving, your attention is diverted somewhere else from this like ritual of eating, taking in nourishment, right? So the analogy I always give is like back in the day, our ancestors would never have been, throwing an apple in their mouth as they were running from a predator, because like it wouldn't have happened. But we really need to understand how sacred the ceremony of eating is again, right? And taking in nourishment so that we do have the energy. So mind your mind and understand that taking precautions around reducing your stress every single day, even if it's for 2 to 3 minutes prior to taking your first bite of food, that could do tremendous things for the power of your digestion so that you feel good.
mm. There's so much you said there that I really want to unpack. So a bowel movement, what, every at least once a day?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, I do think that we get so busy that we're doing something while we're eating oftentimes, even if it's reading a book or like you said, looking at your phone, right? So we should be like really, really present and connecting with the activity of eating mindfully, right?
Absolutely. And here's the thing, I get it, right? Especially with COVID happening right now, we are busy. We're juggling different hats. We're in a smaller space. We're trying to be go-getters, and we have a lot of limitations that are set upon us right now. So like, who's going to take the time to sit and stop and take in the colors of their food and the smells and the aromas and stuff like that? But we have to understand that this used to be a ritual for a reason. We used to all gather and commune around a table with a meal that probably took, an hour or 2 or 3 to cook instead of 20 minutes or something that you throw together. I'm a big fan of throwing things together, but I would say that like honoring this tradition is really, really essential. So a gratitude practice could just be for a moment before you take that first bite where you say, thank you for this nourishment. You're acknowledging every single step that it had to go through before it arrived on your plate from the fields that it grew in, right? Like there's tremendous power to this. And I think that that could be a first step to us. And it sounds like it is actually quite simple, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you mentioned like if you're in a state of stress, you actually don't digest your food as well. And that makes so much sense, but then we often don't think about it. It's like, well, I'm stressed and I have to eat, right? But like if we can relax ourselves and like being in a state of receiving, it's almost like we're really going to get the full value of the nutrients that we're eating.
And wouldn't that be an easier step to take than like, people are always looking for the next fad, the next diet, the next product. And it's like, well, what if it could just be as simple as, noticing what you're eating, the type of foods that you're consuming, and stopping for a second to optimize the environment for your body to receive that food.
Yeah, and the thing that's complicated that I want to like pick your brain about is diets, right? Like, and I know that you're big on undieting or like really eating for your constitution. So I want to like get into that because like there's so many trends out there. There's so many different ways to eat and it can feel like overwhelming. And I think with COVID too, it's like people are home, they have more access to food sometimes, and sometimes, you know, there can be emotional stuff that, you know, so what do you recommend when it comes to like creating a diet that really works for your body?
Yeah, this is the number one question because we all just want to know what to do. People want to know what I eat because my diet might not be the best thing for you. It could be. So I would say, like, you know, really fall in love with this idea of undieting because no one's going to stay on a diet for the rest of their lives, right? Nobody wants to. We've all been there, done that. We go in this cycle of, you know, falling off the wagon, the expression that I hate. So first deciding like it might not look like a diet for you. All right. The second thing you have to understand is a lot of these diets that are being promoted in social and in the media are diets that have been tested on a limited, what am I trying to say, on a limited spectrum of people. So
Yeah.
most diets have been tested exclusively on men because women every single month have to endure a menstrual cycle, which is like a big game changer for looking at, you know, tangible scientific results at the end of every single month. So why would we be on the same diet as a man who has a completely different DNA structure than we do, right? And I would say the first thing you should probably do is just schedule a doctor's appointment for yourself. So I have my thing with the medical industry, but I'm not going to put it down too much because we need it. And the
Mhm.
science is actually catching up today. They're understanding the value of nutrition. But we know that you can understand your biology. Go to your doctor, ask for a full spectrum blood lab, understand what your deficiencies are so that you know exactly what you need. What do you need to be looking for from food or from nutrients or from supplements, first and foremost,
Yeah.
right?
What are some of the most common deficiencies that you notice in people's, you know, bodies right now?
I would say 95% of people that I work with are deficient in vitamin D, which is a game changer. If you suffer from anxiety, poor sleep, inability to lose weight, hormonal issues, all of the above, right? Vitamin D deficiency is big. Magnesium is another really big one. We become deficient in magnesium during our 20s, and it is responsible for over 400 functions in the body, right? So simple things like that, that could be a game changer for your health. And then the second thing is like, you know, adopt rituals. And this is where the tuning in really has to come in, right? From an Ayurvedic standpoint, you can do something like a dosha test to understand your constitution. If you are pitta, kapha, or vata constitution, you can do a simple dosha test at, there's so many online. Deepak Chopra has a really great one on his site. But I would say tune into the foods that make you feel good, right? Whatever you don't buy, you can't eat. So if you know that you're purchasing food that might not be as beneficial to your health, that might come from a box or a package or a list of ingredients. The Swami that we grew up with would always say, anything from a package is dead food. There's no vibration to it, right?
Yeah.
Plant-based foods from the earth have high vibration foods. So when you walk into your produce section, you see the beautiful colors, the purples, the reds, the blues, the oranges, and those are high vibe foods that you want to be consuming. So when I'm breaking down any type of rule for my clients, it's really simple. Make sure that 75% of your plate is full of plant-based, high energy, high nutrient dense food, right? For some people listening, this might be like, how do I do that? I don't like eating vegetables. You know, start with one thing at a time. Look up one new recipe every single week. Once you get rid of typical food cravings, you'll start to acquire the taste of healthy food. While you're living in food addiction, things like wheat, high, you know, fats, high sugars, high salt foods that are packaged and processed, you'll continue to crave them. So get those out of your diet. Fill 75% of your plate with food. And then the other 25%, you know, if you're eating some sort of animal protein and it works for you, great. It could be a plant-based protein and then a high quality fat. That's one trend that is beneficial, but the fat ratio for some people is going to be different for some versus others. So notice, do you feel good on a higher fat or do you need a smaller quantity of fat?
Mm.
And this is where I say, you know, it might be beneficial for you to use a food journal, track how you're feeling with different types of meals. So then you start to see a correlation like, oh, I was vegetarian here and it felt really good. I had a high meat diet here, meat meal here, and I felt like completely drained. That's going to help you assess what path to go.
Yeah, I've been doing that for the past 2 or 3 weeks now, is like keeping a food journal of everything that I eat. And it is such a game changer. Like, I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of what I eat, but when you write it down, it just really allows you to see it visually and be more intentional about it. And
Absolutely.
yeah, so I think that's such a great tip. You mentioned not having cravings. And I think that's important. I'm wondering, do you recommend a detox to get to that place, or like, what are your thoughts there?
Funny you ask. I've been trying a few different detox programs for my clients. Yeah, from an Ayurvedic perspective, detoxing with the change of seasons could actually be very beneficial. We really want to support our detox organs. If your liver is slightly sluggish, then yeah, you're going to feel it, right? But avoid the hardcore detoxes that have you running to the bathroom, you're taking in a lot of synthetic supplements and stuff like that. Your body will naturally detox by simply removing the high inflammatory food category, right? So wheat, all gluten products, remove all dairy from your diet, remove all sugar, and then you want to take out all of the processed flours and inflammatory seed oils.
Mm.
Simple. It's like 4 or 5 food categories, right?
So
Don't
you
buy
eat
those.
no sugar in your diet?
No, we don't purchase a lot of sugar in our house. Granted, I have 2 toddlers. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. Will you find ice cream in my fridge once in a while? 100%. Do I indulge in dark chocolate? Yes. But I know that for me, when I have the food in the house, the second I get bored, my food behavior, my learned food behavior is to go and reach for those foods. If I don't have those foods in the house to reach for, then guess what I'm doing instead? I'm reaching for some nourishing tea. I'm reaching for some fruits or some veggies instead. And that's kind of like a system that I've really found to work in my house. Or I'm making a really great cup of tea with honey. We now know about the medicinal benefits of honey, and that really satiates my sweet tooth. But yeah, trust me, I'm human. I indulge, and I encourage everybody to indulge. But when you are in a state of balance, when your body doesn't have this accumulation, too many toxins inside, then when you eat those foods, the ice cream, the pizza, the fries, whatever it is, your body can metabolize it and you don't get that food hangover the next
Mm.
day. When your body's in a state of stress and you've accumulated too many of these toxins, things are a little bit sluggish, your digestion is off, then you eat those foods and it's like, oh man, you feel heavy, you feel lethargic, you've got that food baby, you go into that food coma. You might even be feeling it the next day, right? We've all felt
Right.
that, the food coma the next day. And that could be the greatest indication for you, like, oh, maybe it's time to do a gentle detox.
Mm. Mona, can you explain what you mean by accumulation?
Yeah. So my dad would always have this expression, growing up: 2 things. One, a cluttered house is a cluttered mind, because clutter adds to accumulation. And then with accumulation, you have to know that in Ayurveda, you digest with all of your senses: what you watch, what you listen to, what you taste, what you eat, right? What you speak. And we have to make sure that over time, we're not accumulating too much, too many toxins from our food, too many negative conversations, too many fearful, anxiety ridden, dramatic television that's like, fueling our mind with anxious thoughts. What are you listening to, right? So this idea of accumulation over time, just be mindful of everything that you're digesting. From a food standpoint, when you get to a point where you're out of balance, chances are that you've been accumulating too many toxic foods for a long period of time, compounded by stress, which fuels accumulation, right? Then the symptoms get stronger, right? Those whispers get louder. And you get to a point where your body manifests as having imbalance or dis-ease. And it could be something as simple as having, eczema, a breakout on your skin, feeling moody, anxiety, sadness one day, having a terrible PMS. These are all signs of possible accumulation that you want to balance your body.
Yeah, gosh, I know. It's so interesting how much that we experience on a daily basis, and that we don't often make the correlation to our diet and what we're, consuming. Like you mentioned, all different ways of consumption. So what are your thoughts on fasting versus counting calories?
You know what? I'm a big fan of fasting. However, it's also going to look different for a lot of people. So, the media obviously right now is really pushing this intermittent fasting, right? And, some of the people that I work with is like, oh, well, I fasted for 16 hours. I fasted for 20 hours. And it's not a competition. And just because it works for somebody doesn't mean that it's going to work for somebody else. Often for women, fasting for that long could also put us in a state of stress. If we're in a state of stress, that's going to, run its course on our endocrine system, our hormones, and, getting our menstrual cycle. So be mindful. My encouragement really is, everybody should at least try to fast for a minimum of 12 to 14 hours every single night, right? This gives your body a really long break. Remember, digestion is a lot of work. So it gives your body the time to go in and clean up shop. Take out any toxins, any dead cells. Your body can really work at doing its cleanup. The science is also there to back it up, right? So there's a lot of different fasting methods that are out there. Maybe it's fasting for 24 hours on one day every single month, right? And this really allows, the science is really showing that, reducing your risks of inflammatory diseases, it's beneficial with that, for blood sugar imbalances and so on. And it's actually something that's been practiced, culturally or spiritually in many different religions for a long period of time. And I see the validity to that as well. But again, I think that it becomes easier for one to do when they're connected to honoring their body, right? So it's not like, okay, I'm going to fast for a day or do that lemon, cayenne pepper cleanse and I'm going to muscle through it. It's like, no, by doing this, I'm creating a ritual. And that ritual is to, honor my body and to give it a really deep sense of a break. So today I'm also going to take it easy. I'm going to do things that are good for me. I'm going to nourish myself. I'm going to use self-care and pamper myself as well so that you can do some deep healing.
I love that. Yeah. And I, in previous could definitely relate to like fasting or counting calories as a way to like punish my body, And so
Yeah,
I love how you say that it's really a way of honoring, on a very like an occasional and really listening to the rhythms of your body and what your body needs. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I kind of call it a return to self, right? Um, just like the ashram is, it's a return to self, and it's really consciously becoming aware of what's happening in your body so that you're not looking for something to do or for what the next solution is. You just genuinely learn how to feel good in your skin. Our
Mm.
bodies are actually built that way, but we're not taught that in school. We're not told to listen to the symptoms. We're not told to listen to our intuition around what foods to eat. And it's a
So
powerful
true.
thing.
Yeah. Is bloating normal?
Bloating is normal to some degree. So, some doctors will say that there's good gas and there's bad gas. So, for example, if you're eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables, for a lot of people, this is going to cause bloating. Some people get used to it over time. Their body builds different digestive enzymes to break down those foods. For other people, cauliflower will always make them bloated, right? But there are good gases released by these cruciferous vegetables within our gut microbiome that are beneficial for killing off bad bacteria, right? If it's bloating that's caused by every single meal, whenever you eat, then chances are there's something deeper you should look into. If you know that it's caused by a specific food, this could be indication of having a simple food sensitivity or a food allergy, or maybe it's just something that you're not accustomed to eating. So you can try keeping that food on rotation maybe every week, bi-weekly, every single month, because I really believe that diversifying your diet, rotating the foods that you take in is beneficial. Could that cause some bloating? Yes. And just, by the way, when you eat, your stomach will expand, right? It's moving from your stomach down to your intestine. It's food that's moving within you. So, for people who say, oh my gosh, look at my stomach. Well, of course you're going to feel a little bit of, compression with your pants. It's normal, right? So just allow that freedom and the flexibility. When we think about, as a woman, your womb, let it go instead of trying to suck everything in. There's an entire ecosystem in your gut microbiome working for you. So give it some space.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is so key. And, um, how do you feel about like treating yourself? I think as women, a lot of times like there's guilt associated with some foods. So like, do you ever, you mentioned dark chocolate, like, how do you feel about like a reward here and there when it comes to food?
It's essential, right? in Ayurveda, we want to honor all of the different tastes that we have. And I think that what's so important about this, oh my gosh, if you look at my Instagram from last night, I made the most perfect meal. I had some roasted salmon, green vegetables, a delicious arugula salad, some high quality fats. And then for dinner, we ended up making these almond flour cupcakes with chocolate on top. Like it is, of course, balanced. So honor that, but just notice when it becomes a food addiction. So if you're constantly craving those foods every single day, maybe it's just addiction. Remember, we live in a society where food scientists are actually hired to make foods more addictive. Things that come in a package, even the foods that come from the healthy health food stores or from Whole Foods, because they want to create loyal consumers globally, right? So they're creating ingredients like sugar or alternatives for sugar that are sweeter than anything that you would find in nature. Well, what does that do? Just like a drug, it triggers your brain to have a craving. It becomes an addiction to want more. It gives us that temporary moment of fulfillment and satisfaction, and then we crash, and then we want more, right? So just be mindful of whether or not it's an addiction for you. But otherwise, yeah, honor those senses. And I would even take it further, like honor all of the flavors in your food. Make sure that you're having a little bit of sweetness and bitterness and something that's pungent and salty and fatty that's like in every single meal, because that's what's going to lead to feeling satiated at every meal as well.
Yes. Okay. So if it's okay, I would love to get into your personal story, because you share that at one point in time, you were told that you weren't going to be able to have children. And I think that's so inspiring that you were able to deal with that diagnosis and work through it and not feel like it was the end of the road. What did you find out about that you would like to share with other women listening?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, it looks probably a little bit different because I had the insight from the ashram growing up. I had also had this incredible role model of a mother who her motto growing up was eat it, it's good for you. Like this woman would try anything and everything to undo the pain that she was experiencing with foods and supplement. Okay. So I had that behind me. But I would say when I was diagnosed as having major severe PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome. And I became, I stopped getting my periods as well. That was like, okay, my reproductive system is on fire right now and it is shutting down. So much so that a doctor is telling me that I won't be able to have kids. And so, well, I took that as, well, my body's communicating with me that something is inflamed and out of balance. Well, what can I do? And as I did my research and I got more into this world of functional medicine and functional nutrition and creating changes within your body, but understanding, well, what was the root cause of all of this? My symptoms weren't the root cause, right? My lifestyle was the root cause. I always say to my clients, often with a thyroid indication on your blood labs, it's typically never the thyroid that something's wrong with, but your thyroid is giving you a signal saying like, hey, something else is out of balance, right? So always be mindful of what the source is. And so in my studies, I started following, some of my then mentors, today business partners, but people like Dr. Mark Hyman is a really great one in the world. And I understood, well, hang on a second. He's noticing that you can actually reverse these like symptomology reports, right? So changing my diet was a really big one. We know that PCOS can actually be reduced or if not eliminated by switching your diet, taking away the things that are causing you, remember you specifically, inflammation, taking in an abundance of plant-based high fiber foods, low in the sugar spectrum, loaded with prebiotic fiber as well. And so over time, as I did that, and remember, I was looking at my body as a whole. So I'll share my pillars in a moment, but really understanding, okay, what am I doing for my spirit today? What am I doing for movement today to make my body feel better? And how am I fueling myself? And over time, because remember, nothing happens overnight, I would notice that my symptoms started to subside. My skin would get clear. My energy would go up. The anxiety would lessen. The bloating would go down. And then sure enough, this led to the path of me being able to get pregnant. That did lead to my first miscarriage, which was traumatic and another set of lessons there. But I think that it was a combination of what I said. So understanding my biology and then understanding my spirit and really fueling or fusing those worlds together.
Thank you for sharing that. That is so, so powerful. And I love how you say that your diagnosis is not your destiny, and also that fact that you bring in so much around mindset and NLP. And can you share just a little bit about how our emotionality is so connected to our overall well being?
Yeah, at the ashram, and even with the yoga practice, right? In India, yoga is less about the asana, the poses that you do every single day. And it's more about the power of your breath and the power of your mind, thought power. And I noticed that my mind was consumed with thoughts of anxiety, lack of worth, always in this mode of comparison to other people, lack of fulfillment, blame, and things that had just, I had been feeding these rituals about myself that simply weren't true, right? So hitting rock bottom for me was like, okay, I actually don't have to believe that voice in my head. It's actually not real. And who is it? It's Michael Singer. So there's a book called The Untethered Soul, which is a very powerful book. I love it. But he calls this removing your inner thorn. And in the same way that I started to get my heart palpitations, I don't think that my heart was the issue, but I was going through so many heart-centered imbalances. My parents were getting a divorce. We had moved out of a long-term house. My brother and my sister had moved away. I had broken up with a long-time boyfriend. I was uncertain about the future. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, there's so many things. And the doctors never once asked me about, well, how are you feeling? What are you eating? What are your habits? Instead, I wanted that quick fix, Band-Aid solution of going in, getting the heart surgery, getting the medication, and dealing with the problem, instead of taking care of the inner thorn and doing the personal work around that, right? So I think that acknowledging, what are you telling yourself? What is your current belief system like? Because when I first started as a nutritionist and working with people, yeah, I'd put them on a diet and we'd go through this trial and error of what would work and what didn't work. But what's the point? You can't heal a body that you don't love, or a body that you don't give enough worth to changing, right? So it's kind of like you're doing one thing and you're saying the other, right? People who are doing all the right things, but they're still not feeling good. And this is what drove me into the path of NLP. Early in my career, I started working with a lot of professional athletes. And gosh, you work with an athlete, whatever you do, they're on it. They will follow a program to a T. But then I couldn't understand, well, why are these people who have, the chef, the masseuse, the doctor, the personal care therapist, massage, like they had everything. Why are they still not feeling great every day? And it had to do with their belief system, right? This idea of self-compassion and self-love. And similar to my story at the ashram, what did it do? It shut down the noise. So I was forced to deal with myself, my self-compassion, and the voice in my head, and understanding that that wasn't real. And that's what turned me to NLP. So NLP is neurolinguistic programming, understanding the power of communication, the power of your words with others, but also with self. And I would say one of my greatest breakthroughs came through NLP and just understanding like, oh yeah, there was that moment when I was 12 years old that made me believe this about myself. And it actually wasn't true. Well, I've been believing that for the past 30 years. Like what, what is the point? Right? So notice what your voice is like. Are you saying things like you're speaking to yourself out of love? Are you speaking to yourself like a little kid who just wants to be seen and loved and heard and taken care of? Or are you doing the opposite? And are you living in constant self-criticism, constant disconnect from what you need, right? It's time to start listening to the voice.
Yes, I think NLP can be so, so powerful. And I love that you shared that. What are some, maybe simple practices that you recommend to like really shift our mindset?
I would say, the power of daily rituals is everything. So in Ayurveda, we call this dinacharya. But we know that for anything to become a habit, you have to turn it into a ritual itself, right? So decide on one or two things that would be a game changer for you. Maybe it's creating an exercise regime. Maybe it's meditation. Maybe it's, meeting up with a friend, or the power of your mornings, right? So let's start there, because I honestly think that this is one that all of us can do, because our mornings are everything, right? I call them magic mornings. They could dictate how your day runs. So in Dinacharya and Ayurveda, there's kind of like a set of things that you do to optimize the way that your body works. So I would often say to my clients, try waking up just a little bit earlier. I know that you're busy. We're all busy. but wake up a little bit earlier. Wake up before the sun comes up, right? Start your day off with a personal gratitude practice. When's the last time that you thanked your heart for beating for you nonstop since the time you were in your mother's womb? When's the last time you thanked your digestive system for constantly working for you, your brain for existing? Like, go through some gratitude. Next, move into some visualization. Have you ever set an intention for your day? Have you ever done that for yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's powerful, right? If you decide that you're going to have a great day, you're going to nourish yourself that day, you're going to do things that are good for you, then chances are you do that, as opposed to just getting up and we go mindlessly about our day, rushing for coffee, rushing to get dressed, rushing to work, but creating space for you. Other rituals for your mindset are really going through something I call the best self snapshot. So anybody can do this. If you were to simply close your eyes and try to remember a time in your life when you felt happiness, when you felt joy, when you felt peace, when you felt ease, or I'm in love with this word awe. When, even if it was for a split second, could have been yesterday, could have been when you were 3 years old, you just felt that moment of like, oh, everything is just so good right now. You're so present to feeling good. Feel that in your body. As NLP will say, what did it feel like? What did it smell like then? What did it sound like? Were there any sounds in the background that you can turn up? Were there colors? Turn it up. Every day, go back to this moment of awe, of feeling great. Because the power of your thoughts can actually reawaken the cells in your body to feeling that emotion as though it's happening right now, as opposed to happening in the past, right? That's the power of our thoughts. So if you were to align with this high vibration before your feet even touch the ground, before getting out of bed, you're already halfway there, right? It's not trying to get there and drag your feet and rushing to coffee and looking for external motivators to change your state. You're doing it yourself. And over time, your body, your mind develops this belief system that like, oh yeah, you can actually control your thoughts. So like, let's turn down the noise on that busyness and anxiety and worry and tension and fear. Let's turn on the volume and turn up the vibration of like happiness and joy and great memories and forgiveness and love and peace. And then all of a sudden your body starts to respond. So another area that might seem a little bit woo-woo, but is also backed by science today.
Yeah, I love that. Such great tips, and I feel like in the beginning, when you're making that transition, when you do have a lot of negative chatter, it is like being very intentional with feeding your thoughts, like really gratitude and self-love, and making rituals and practices throughout the day to sort of remind yourself and check into that. So love that. How is it for you being an entrepreneur and a mom of two? How do you sort of balance it all? And then when you do fall out of alignment, as we all do, like how do you sort of like pick yourself back up? And how do you sort of deal with any of those challenges that might arise?
Yeah, I'm still working on that. It's not easy. Here we are. We wear so many hats, right? Even if you don't have a kid, I know that you're wearing a lot of hats in your life. But I would say that for me, it's the power of ritual every day that allows me to thrive. On the days where I don't follow through with my self-care practices, when my diet goes out the window, when I indulge in thoughts of anxiety or gossip or, scary movies, right? It really affects me. And it's taken me some time to get there, but I'm understanding that, when I address my state, I'm dealing with the power of my mind, the power of my heart, and the power of my gut microbiome together. So like I said before, align yourself with specific rituals throughout the day that serve you and set the environment, right? Take the guesswork out of it. So, keep some essential oils at your computer. Keep water with you wherever you go. Set up a little meditation nook right at the base of your bed. So you literally just take 2 steps to sit there. Create the environment so that your rituals become easy for you. And then notice how much you thrive in those moments. And then, your mind's always gathering evidence, right? Gathering evidence for what feels good, what doesn't feel good. The more that you do this over time, but you give it emotional meaning, you're more likely to stick with it. So for me, when I'm in my meditation, I notice, my God, my mind just feels more clear. This feels really, really good. I just want to hold on to this. Or when I indulge in self-care practices, like moving my body first thing in the morning. It's like, oh my gosh, this makes my body so happy. I feel more limber. It's taken off that toxin from sleeping overnight. Or turning down the noise at night before you go to bed, setting up a ritual for you to go to bed an hour early to set the state, because oh my gosh, if I get a great night's sleep, game changer, right? And when I do those things, I look at myself, well, how am I as a mother? How am I as a woman? How am I as an entrepreneur? And I notice that I'm able to show up as the person that I want to be, right? Instead of living in lack. And I think as women, we tend to do this. I'm not doing enough. I'm not enough. It's too hard. How can she do it? I can't. We live in comparison. Instead of just acknowledging, no, you're just out of flow right now. And you need to acknowledge what you need in order to thrive. And this looks different for all of us. And, when I keep talking about this idea of vibration, every day it could be meditation, it could be journaling, it could be breath work, it could be body work, it could be, getting into your creative zone or painting, whatever it is that gives you that moment of like, all right, I did my self-care today. Now let's go at it. Because as we get older, our parents always told us life doesn't get easier, it gets busier. We have more responsibilities. And if you're somebody who's ambitious, then you've got lots of work that you still want to do. So you've got to avoid putting yourself on the back burner, make yourself a priority, be completely selfish with taking care of yourself. That's the only way that you're going to show up as the person that you want to manifest.
Mona, this has been such an amazing conversation, packed with so much wisdom. Where can people go to learn more about you, work with you, learn about your offerings?
Yeah, you can find me. So I love Instagram as a platform. So it's monasharma.com, or sorry, at Mona Sharma on Instagram. My website is monasharma.com. But come say hello, reach out. I'm in love with the power of community, which is something that you are creating for the women out there and the mothers as well. Drop me a line. I think the more that we believe in the power of lifting each other up, the stronger we're going to be, especially during all of the transition that we're going through right now. I've got a free download on my website, so it kind of recaps a lot of what we talked about today. A great list of healthy food options. If you are that person looking for a food list, you can find it on my website.
Oh, that's so amazing. We will link to all of those in the show notes. And just a final word, anything that you would say to people out there that are listening that are feeling maybe really out of alignment, just for whatever reason, like what advice would you have?
If you had a friend that came to you with the same symptoms that you were experiencing, and I'm talking like your best friend, and you decided, you know what, I'm not going to indulge and just commiserate together. I'm going to try to offer her a service value. What would you say to your friend? Chances are you would say, do something to take care of yourself. Get active, find help, find something that inspires you, find a person or a mentor to inspire you. Whatever advice that you feel your friend needs to hear, take that advice for yourself and then take action. Don't wait.
Such great advice. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Keep doing what you're doing.